Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Hello?
I'm sitting here waiting for you to start the show.
Oh,
on the last...
yes. Listen, everyone give your magic internet to us. You know how, did you ever watch Dragon Ball Z?
No.
Okay, well, in Dragon Ball Z, there was a move called the Spirit Bomb.
Uh-huh.
And the whole world would send up its ki energy to Goku, who would collect it in his hands, and then he would throw it as one big bomb at the enemy.
Oh, wow.
And that's what we need from you guys today with the internet, because we're having internet trouble. So you got to send us your megabits.
We need all the electrons you got.
Send us all of your bits. Send us the megabits, and the internet will be better. Do I sound better now?
Well, you're not being interrupted every 3 seconds by a gap, so I'd say that's an improvement.
Okay. Well, then I will start the show now. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Through the darkness of futures past, the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Fire, walk with me. Hello, 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 everybody.
Hello, Sumo.
The owls are not what they seem at all. Hello, good morning, Smokestack. Good morning, San Francisco. How are you?
When did San Francisco get invited to the show? I don't remember inviting them.
Well, it's, that's where I'm sitting doing the show today, is San Francisco.
Really? Awesome. I
am in the middle. I don't know what anything's called, but I can see the Golden Bridge, and I can see the big building with the pointy part at the top.
Wow.
It's there. And I'm sort of up here on a hill looking out at all the homeless people. And we're having a great time, all of us out here. How's it going today?
It's going real good.
Did you catch my reference there with my poem and my owls are not what they seem?
That was all Twin Peaks references, yeah?
Yes, Twin Peaks. It was a great show. Trivia question time. Do you know what year it aired?
No. 90-something, right?
1990.
Oh, there you go.
It was basically an 80s show that sort of wrapped over into the 90s. And that was season 1. And as all good shows do, season 2 then came out 27 years later in 2017.
I think that supports my theory that the world entered into a new spiritual epoch in the late 80s, early 90s. And
it can't get out of it.
And it can't get out. We're still stuck in the weirdness. The weirdness started at that time.
I agree. It's like a time sink, cultural sink, and it just is holding you there.
Yep.
Like a morass. I got a bunch of maps recently, and I don't mean like Mystical American Patriot Society. I mean like new maps, physical maps.
That's good. Those are good to have.
I have a wall at my house. One of my houses. I have a wall. Well, I have these walls at every house that I have. Mm-hmm. But in particular in my mind right now, because, houses have to have walls.
Sure.
But in particular in my mind right now, I'm thinking of the walls in my house with the maps, where I have the push pins. Mm-hmm. I've got a blue push pins and green push pins, some red, yellows. I've got gray.
Are the push pins connected with red yarn?
No, only sometimes.
Okay.
The big the green push pins on my big America map are all the places where someone I know personally claims to have seen a Bigfoot.
Oh.
Someone I know personally. Like, I've got one. There's one here. There's one that's in Alabama, which is unusual because there's not a lot in the South for some reason. Bigfoot doesn't get around there.
Okay.
Unless it's Florida, and then it's the skunk ape. Florida has to call everything by a different name. Yeah. It's sort of like England.
Right.
You know, England's like, did you get your tiddly-weebies? And by that they mean your flip-flops or whatever.
Right.
They can't just call things by their name without making themselves talk like babies.
You know what a microwave is in the Welsh language?
Let me guess. It's a wavity babity.
Close. It's a poppity ping.
No, it isn't.
It is.
Did you put the poppities in the pingities?
No, it's a poppity ping.
Poppity ping.
Yep.
We should do an all British episode one day.
You know, last night I was watching British gardening shows. It was great. It was these really mild mannered British people from the 80s, just calmly talking about their beautiful gardens.
Yeah.
That's the entire show.
Everything has to be called a tiddlywinks or something.
There's no plot. They did. It was funny because, you know, my hearing's not so good, so I watch in closed captioning. And they're so mumbly in British that the closed captioners, like every line, there's a brackets inaudible. Because it's, this is a lovely clematis. And it's just the closed captioner is helpless to interpret what they're saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the hearing loss, by the way. That's just a thing I still haven't worked out of the cloning process.
Yeah, you know, all told, I'm in pretty good health. So yeah. I'm just glad to be out of the test tube.
When you begin to physically deteriorate, I'll reboot you with another body, try to copy over the memories, and I'll try to work on the hearing this time.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Yeah, the green ones are my Bigfoot pins. I got one from my buddy Rick. You know, Rick's always see Bigfoots. Rick's and Clarence's. Anybody named Rick or Clarence has seen a Bigfoot, especially if Clarence is black. Black guy's named Clarence.
Yeah.
100% chance that black guy named Clarence has seen a Bigfoot.
I wish I knew one.
Yeah.
I'd ask him.
Anyway, Rick's pin is over there out in Blue Dome, there in Idaho, near of course Skull Canyon. He said it was orange like an orangutan, which I don't know if I believe because it's a bit weird.
Well, some people are orange.
That's true, including dear leader.
Yeah.
You know, and then my yellow ones are for miraculous happenings. My red ones are for abductions. They're red because, you know, abductions are a little negative.
Yeah, dangerous.
Yeah. I keep I have the book with me, even though I don't have the map with me. And the book has like all of the, because, you know, I can't memorize all these push pins. Mm-hmm. So I keep them in a little book and I keep them numbered. You know, like Red 7. Red 7 was Paul out of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And he didn't tell me much about his case other than it happened. And to be frank, I'm a little dubious since Paul's a professional scammer.
Yeah.
You know, he's one of those guys that does multi-level marketing things.
Oh, right.
Otherwise, a great guy, but he has this scar on his neck he claims is an implant. So,
you know, the kids in middle school that would compulsively lie, and everybody knew that they compulsively lied.
Yes.
They grow up to be those guys.
Yeah. Yes. And what is the archetype of the high school or middle school girl that grows up to sell Jamba Juice or whatever they sell? What do they sell? It's like I
don't know.
Juice Plus. That used to be a thing like 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, I remember Juice Plus.
It's like, listen, buy my Jamba Juice, and all the worst people sell that stuff.
Yeah, I've had some bad experiences with people really, really wanting me to join their multi-level marketing program.
It's like a cult, and not even a fun one.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna join a cult, listeners, make sure it's one where there's a guy he's wearing white and he's got really long hair.
Right.
That's the best kind. There should probably be, there's probably going to be some orgies. Just prepare for that because that's what happens.
But they take a lot less of your money.
A lot less of your money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you may have to live there and abandon all of your friends and family, but at least you'll be able to afford rent.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I was thinking about my maps. I got some new maps today. I got a map of the Tennessee cave systems.
Ooh, cool.
To be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I got a new one that's sort of national park centric. It's hard to explain. It's like it's America, but everything not a national park is sort of grayed out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I got a fresh normal map of Arkansas, and I'm gonna try to mark out all the missing 411 cases in Arkansas on that one.
Ooh, neat.
Yeah, and then also my last one, I have a new map of the it's of the land around the Gulf of Mexico, right, including Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I've just sort of traced out the paths of all the Spanish conquistadors, alongside the flight paths of various migratory birds.
Ooh,
it's very nice. It looks very pretty. I'm enjoying it because that's what today's show's about. It's about the owls not being what they seem. Mm-hmm. It's about fairy tales. It's about how you draw connections between things and the meaning making of intrinsic in man, where he tries to make meaning and how he sometimes does it all wrong.
I like it.
Yeah. Because I've been thinking about that. Because what got me thinking about it is you can tell that pandemic was kind of a bust because we're now back to like trying to stoke racial tensions.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, that wasn't working. Let's go back to the tried and true lynching stuff.
Yep.
That gets people worked up.
Mm-hmm.
And, this latest one with the guys in the pickup trucks and the guy supposedly jogging.
Jogging with a hammer?
In cargo pants and boots. Like it's not like you can already tell there's something else going on here.
Right. Like I'm not saying the guy was up to no good, but I am saying he was not jogging.
Yeah. Like there's more to the story. And I'm not sure what the guys in the trucks thought they were supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Right.
But the important thing is that we do not really pursue any facts, but rather plug it into our predetermined view of the world and totally freak the heck out.
Yeah, what it is you got a map of the world, a psycho map, and you take this thing, you say, well, this looks like this other pushpin color, and you just put it in there.
Yeah. And
let me tell you, if you did that with all your Bigfoots that people tell me about, I would just be covered in Bigfoot push pins. But if you don't question it, it's like, but could it have been a bear?
Well, there's a lot of people out there that are covered in redneck lynching push pins.
And I don't understand that.
I've met some of them.
My person who I call a friend still, although he's done everything short of put a restraining order against me.
I don't think he's your friend.
Well, he's blocked me from everything on the internet. He's blocked my phone.
Right. I'm sure you guys will work it out.
I don't think that he. Can you block emails? I guess you can.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know that he has or not. I haven't sent him one, but I'm just guessing maybe he did. Anyway, he was all like, he's a runner guy, and he was all like, it's sad we live in a world where I don't have to be afraid to go jogging and other people get hunted for their lives.
Oh, give me a break. White people get killed jogging all the time. Are you kidding me?
I was like, hey.
Oh, man.
That's not real. Like, that's what I told him. I said, you are a person that was raised and still part-time lives in the South.
Yep.
And I was like, that is not real. These guys may have been completely in the wrong and they're lunatics, right?
Yeah.
But that would be like one instance of someone doing that. It isn't real that there's an existential threat of like
that is not the South. If that was the South, New Yorkers wouldn't be moving here in droves.
Yeah. It's there's not lynch mobs of people in pickup trucks driving around hunting black joggers. That's just, it's not true, and you know it's not true.
You know it's not. That's the thing, is they know it's not true, and they say it anyway. That's what gets me fired up about it. It's like, we'll take your money. We'll buy your cheap property up, but we're going to slander the hell out of you guys every opportunity we get. It's like, give me a break, man.
And what it is this, once you get a map going, I was thinking about it. It's like, this is the problem. Once you get a map going on the wall, you really want to fill it up with push pins.
Yeah.
And you got to resist the urge to artificially fill it up with push pins. Like what I did on my map, where I have my Bigfoots, my UFOs, my miraculous happenings, and my abduction cases, I kept wanting to put more push pins in it prematurely.
Yeah.
So what I did is I just got gray push pins, and I just tagged all of my favorite Whataburgers. And that made it feel like, okay, now something's happening. So you can do it. You can just, if you get that urge, you just fill it with something non-threatening. Like something neutral. You pick a gray neutral color and you tag all the Whataburgers.
Right.
And what you could do in this case is you could take your need for metaphysical mental push pins, and you could like put them in places where people were wearing Carhartts or something. And then that's like a close analogy to what you're trying to get at, which is I'm better than other people.
And it fills the map out. Wait, Carhartts are like a virtue signal? How did that happen?
Oh, no. But if you see someone wearing Carhartts and you're not a person that wears Carhartts, then you can pretend that you're better than they are.
What? I wear Carhartts all the time. Up yours, dude.
Well, I'm just saying that's what the liberal people do. Okay. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you look like a working class person.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, they're saying like, look, because what they really want to do is be like, look, here's the poor working class people.
Right.
And they behave like X. And I'm not.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so you can use whatever proxy you want to use to define working class people, like if they wear Carhartts or if they smoke a lot, maybe. I don't know what you want. If there's payday advance loans in the area, you can put push pins there, and that'll probably be where poor people are.
Yeah.
And then you do something just sort of neutral. It's like your Whataburgers, and that's how you fight that urge to like throw things into a bin that don't need to be in a bin.
Yeah.
But that's it's like everything. The owls are not what they seem. Nothing's what they seem.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah. That show was so good because everyone watched it and no one understood what happened.
Right. Well, the fandom like made all the meaning happen.
Yes, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
It's a magical thing.
How the meaning making of people goes, and I want to talk about that. What we're going to do. Here's the basic arc of today's show. Are you ready, listener? Here's the basic arc. We're going to talk about meaning making in the context of fairy tales first. Because I don't think most people understand how to understand fairy tales. I've been shocked by how many adults don't understand fairy tales. And then we're going to talk about hydroponic gardening, which I'm sure connects. And then we're going to talk about owls and the UFO experience via Mike Clelland's great work. Ooh. Does that sound good?
It's good, but change hydroponics for aquaponics.
Oh, is there a difference?
There is.
Okay, aquaponics. That's the one that is the cyan color.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So fairy tales are to sort of Europe what Greek mythology was to the Greeks.
Okay.
First of all, like, in fact, it was perceived to be such by all the people that recorded them because, like, in the 19th century, there were all these people going around like the Brothers Grimm and stuff, writing these things down because there was a fear of industrialization and modernization, and it was going to kill the native spirituality of their countries. Right.
Well, that was well founded.
It was well founded. And so, but these fairy tales, see, people think they're just stories and stuff, but actually, I think what happens in a lot of fairy tales is that something real happens. And then over time, meaning layers get made onto it and the story gets made coherent. Just like over time, Twin Peaks has been made into a coherent story by its fans. But at the time, you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Right? Same thing. So let's let's first talk about like Billy Groat's Gruff. You remember Billy Groat's Gruff?
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is the most basic one because it's 3 goats and they want to go where they want to go. They want to go somewhere better. They want to get to the better land, right?
Yep.
Which is how everyone wants to do. They want to move from where they are to the place with the greener grass. And some people feel they need to do that by virtue signaling, right? And so what they do, but to do that, you must transition. And anytime there's a transitionary period, which is symbolized by the bridge, right? But anytime you go across a bridge, anytime you're in a liminal space, a transitionary space, monsters can pop up because you're moving from a thing you know to a place you don't know, and you don't know how to deal with everything in the place you don't know. And so when you go across the bridge, that's when you can encounter trolls, right? Mm-hmm. So that sort of motif is right there. That's like the most basic, right? But so some that are a little more complicated, like Rumpelstiltskin. Okay. Right? I was telling the Rumpelstiltskin story to my kids the other day, and my wife, she just didn't understand like the meaning of Rumpelstiltskin, and I was like, "It's pretty obvious, right?"
That's always a great way to handle it when your wife doesn't understand. Is say, "Well, honey, it's pretty obvious." Yeah, that goes over really well.
What the heck is wrong with you? Why are you so stupid? And then we had a great night together.
I bet.
But no, I mean, so the basic story of Rumpelstiltskin is there's this miller, right? Because for some reason it's always a miller. I haven't worked out why it's always a miller. And he has a beautiful daughter, but they're poor. And one day the king is hunting nearby the mill, and he stops the king and he says, "Hey, king." He's trying to impress the king. He's like, not only is my daughter beautiful, but she can spin straw into gold. Which is not true. Yeah. Right. That's like his virtue signaling. He's like, I want to spin my straw. I can spin straw into gold. Or my daughter can. And so the king's like, well, if she can do that, I'd very much like to see it. Bring her to the castle tomorrow. So he does. And the king takes her to a room and filled with straw and says, hey, here's a wheel. Get to spinning. If you spin the straw to gold in the morning, that'd be great. If you don't, I'm going to have to behead you. And so she's obviously distressed about this, as most of us would be, because she doesn't know how to spin straw to gold. And while she's crying, guess what happens? A little sneaky man comes in through the keyhole. Mm-hmm. Just like smoke, like a genie, like a djinn, and he appears and he's bald, of course, because they always are. Little tiny sneaky men are always bald. And he says, just like my sneaky lying friend that hasn't got a restraining order on me, he's not bald, but he is very small. I think that's part of he's barely 5 foot tall. And I think that's part of why he feels the need to do this, social insecurity. But anyway, and he says, well, I can do that. I can spin it into gold for you. Right. And she said, well, but you got to give me something. So first she gives him her necklace. And then the king is overjoyed. He says, look at all this gold. Takes her to a bigger room, right? Filled with straw. More straw. You got to do the same thing. She cries again. He comes back through the keyhole. She gives her ring this time. The king is overjoyed. Does it a third time. A bigger room. And he says, this time, if you can do it, I will marry you, right? And but she doesn't have anything else of value to give the little man when he comes back this time. So he says, well, okay, just give me your firstborn child. Right? And of course she agrees, because at this point, what's she going to do? Yeah. She's going to be beheaded in the morning, So anyway, it happens, and they marry, and then a year later, she gives birth to a son, and she's largely forgotten about the little man, as actually often happens when people have really weird experiences. They tend to forget it. Mm-hmm. It's something like if you don't have a place to put a memory, if you don't have a map to stick your push pin on, as it were, it just sort of rolls off the table.
It's a good analogy.
That happens a lot to people. Mm-hmm. Like if you have something weird happen, and then you'll be 5 years later and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was strange. Why didn't I ever think of that before? So anyway, she forgets all about it. And then one day he shows up in her bedroom and he's like, hello, give me what you promised. And she's upset. Obviously she doesn't want to give her child to this weird little bald man. And his heart is moved to compassion, and also not really, because he thinks it's impossible for her to figure this out. So he just wants to tease her more. And he says, well, look, I'll give you 3 days if you can figure out my name, right? I will not. I'll let you keep the baby. And so 3 days go by, 2 days go by, and she's like, are you Paul? No. Are you Leibowitz? No. Are you Samson? No. On and on. Are you Trayvon Martin? No. And then she gets to, she's about at her wit's end, and then one of her guards is out the night before, and he overhears the little man dancing in the woods saying a little poem about his name is Rumpelstiltskin. She figures it out, and she's safe. And so is the baby. Hooray. Right?
Right.
Hooray. Now, I know all of our listeners are very smart, much smarter than my wife. And so they have figured this out already. Right? They figured out how all this goes. But I will walk it through them for them, just in case. Okay, so look. It begins with you're trying to seek worldly power. And you're trying to get into the halls of power. And you do that through the initiation into the halls of power, which is a lie. You must begin with a lie and agree to a lie for to get into the kingdom of the world. Right? Which is, I can turn lead into gold. Okay. Now, to fulfill now it's sort of like the reverse of prayer. So in prayer, you pray for things that you cannot achieve, right? And you hope that God will fulfill them.
Right. It's
like the reverse of that. Here you tell a lie, something that cannot happen. And often what will then happen is if you're willing to sacrifice something to the little demons, they will fulfill it for you.
I'm just imagining people that I meet in Nashville that are all trying to pretend that they're famous country singers.
Exactly.
Right. But they're really not, but they're hoping if they fake it long enough, a demon will offer them a deal.
Yes.
And then they'll become one.
That does work, is the point. And both Rumpelstiltskin and my own is that if you open with the lie, you invite the demon in. Like the lie is the prayer to the demon to say, "Come work in my life." Please.
I really think that that's true.
It is 100% true, and it's all contained in this story, right? Is that if you start with the lie, and you say, hey, and that's how you get into like upper levels of politics. This is how you become like an Elon Musk, and the demon's like, okay, I will, but look, your firstborn child, you got to name AX12.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'll do it. Just give me that Tesla money and take away my baldness.
I feel like that demon really wasn't trying.
No, I mean, trust me. Well, that's a way for them to, that baby is marked for bad things.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's going to happen because good intervenes, but when you do something like that to your child, that's one reason all the celebrities do weird things to their kids. Mm-hmm. Because it's in a literal way, you have to sacrifice your firstborn child sometimes. Like this is why they name them weird stuff. That's why they make them transgender, because to hold on to the fame, you got to go along with the lies.
Ooh,
you see?
ooh.
To hold on to you got to go along. You got to keep appeasing the demon. That's the thing. The demon comes and he'll help you, but you got to continually appease him, and eventually you run out of things to offer except your own life and the life of those under you. And because the demon even says, like when the demon comes back a year later and asks for in the story, Rumpelstiltskin, he comes back and he asks for the kid. She goes, look, I'm the queen now. I'll give you half the kingdom. I'll give you, whatever you want. I can give you anything. And he goes, no. I'd rather have something living than all the kingdom in the world. Mm. Because the demon isn't fooled by his own holograms. Like you think all this wealth and stuff, it matters, but he knows it's all just paper. What he wants is he wants the living soul.
Yeah.
You see? He's not tricked. He gets you to what evil always does is get you to trade the real for a hologram. Mm. And you do this every day with money because money is just green paper. It makes as much sense as if you go outside and you pick up a leaf and you say, hello, will you give me some goods and services if I give you this maple leaf? And all the Canadians say, yes, certainly we will. And it makes as much sense as that, right? And like social clout, like the number of followers you have on Twitter or the number of likes you get on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Like all these things people run after, the number of Instagram followers you have, like none of that. That's just numbers. It's a fake. It doesn't actually exist. And like to acquire it, but see, it seems to symbolize what exists. Like money isn't wealth. It isn't like, your health. It isn't like a nice place to live. It isn't a house, but it symbolizes that you could get that. Although you often don't, because those things fall apart when you acquire things in this manner. The money symbolizes it, and the demon is happy to trade you the symbol. He's happy to trade you the hologram for the real every time, because he doesn't have anything real himself. And this is what goes on. But so the trick about the Rumpelstiltskin is, so as you go into more progressively in the halls of power, you need greater and greater sacrifices. As you go up, as you're the Nashville musician that wants to first open with a lie in hopes that the demon will take him in, right? Mm-hmm. As that begins to happen, you have to continually conform yourself further and further to get ahead, right? To the point where, you're one day you're in the Harvey Weinstein's bedroom.
Yeah.
Even if you're a guy, because let me tell you something, a lot of these male actors.
Oh yeah.
They want to, if you want to get into the upper, not all the time. There are people that circumvent it through means of grace and just luck. But like, I don't think it ever happened to Mel Gibson. Like one.
John Travolta kind of pulled back the curtain on that for a little bit.
Yeah. If you want to be an A-list movie star, male or female, you often have to give up the butt. Mm. It just is that's the way it works, right?
That's what they want down there. It's the butt.
Yeah. And then you often have to go. So, that as you go further and further into these rooms, into the chambers, it's filled with more straw, and you got to do more. You need more demonic intervention to make it happen.
Yeah. Right.
And to do that, you need a greater sacrifice. But here's the trick. Here's the great thing about Rumpelstiltskin is it tells you how to get out of it. Like, okay, you say, hey Sumo, hey Smokestack, I've been making deals with the devil for fame and power and money. But I would like to stop because I don't want to sacrifice myself anymore or my unborn child. What do I do? And the story says you got to learn the name. You get the name of the demon, and then you got to say once you can say it, because once you that's it's basically confession. Right. Once you say what has happened, speak the truth. Like I know you know what's happening. You say this is evil. You call it by its name, right? And you point at it and say your name is evil. Your name is Rumpelstiltskin. It has no more power over you anymore, but you have to admit it, right? Yeah. And that's all wrapped up in this simple little kid's fairy tale. And my wife didn't get it, and she was all upset when I berated her about not getting it. But I know that all of our brilliant listeners understood it perfectly.
If any of our listeners need to confess deals that they've been doing with demons, they can reach out to us at mapsoc.org.
Yes.
And we'd be happy to hear your confession.
And look, I will hear your confession. I don't claim to offer absolution, but God will absolve you. Yeah. I will, if you need to talk things through, one of the main reasons a psychologist exists is for people to talk through the bad things they've done with someone. It's like a secular priest confession, really.
All right.
And the thing is, without getting into dogma things, it's just saying it to whoever. Is a great help. Yeah. Just admitting that you did something that you should not have done.
You still got to square it up with the Lord, but at least talk to a friend about it. Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier to talk to a clone than it is to God Almighty.
Yeah.
At the start, right?
Yeah.
So so that's one, and the meaning is there, but you got to. It's not obvious. It's like Twin Peaks. The meaning is there, but it's not in your face. It speaks to you. It's sort of like a parable, and like Hansel and Gretel's the same way. Now, Hansel and Gretel, the story most people receive is not the one that the Grimm's brothers wrote down, because they leave out the part where the stepmom tries to kill the children. But that's in the original bit, because they're starving. Like it's a woodcutter.
Yeah, she was cold, man.
Yeah, it's a woodcutter and his wife, and they're out in the woods, and they're having a famine, and the stepmom's like, "Hey, listen, husband, we can't even feed ourselves. We can't feed these kids. Let's take them out to the woods, give them a loaf of bread, and we'll just leave them there." And the kids overhear this at night from their room, and they sob, and Hansel is like, "Do not worry, Gretel. I will come up with something, and God will protect us." in his little Dutch voice or whatever. And he goes outside and he finds some pebbles, or as the British call them, pebbly webblies.
Yes.
He gets his pebbly webblies and he puts them in his pockets. And and the next morning, as they're being led out to the woods by their stepmother that wants to leave them there, he drops them along the road. And then he finds their way back, obviously. But then they do it. Then there's another famine later, right? And the stepmom has the same plan, because the stepmom, when she comes back, when they come back, both the stepmom and the dad are like, "Oh, we're so happy to see you," because evil can never admit what it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it does, it stops being evil, right? If you name it, then the Rumpelstiltskin goes away. But so the children come back and like, "Oh, you naughty children, you were lost," and they evil often blames you for what happened. Right. They say, "Oh, you naughty children, we thought you'd never come back from the woods. Why did you linger so long?" Right? When they did it on purpose to try and get them lost. So they come up with this same thing a second time, but this time when Hansel goes out to get pebbles, the door is locked. The front door is locked, and he can't go outside. So he tries to use his loaf of bread they give him in the morning instead. But of course, that's not a good plan because the birds will eat it. But Hansel doesn't think of this because he's like 7, right?
Yeah.
So the birds eat all of his things, and then they're lost. And they spend 3 days, highly symbolic, just like Rumpelstiltskin gives her 3 days to come up with his name. They spend 3 days in the woods until they see a white bird. I believe it's a dove, and they follow it, thinking it is a sign, and it leads them to the witch's cabin made of gingerbread and icing and stuff. Okay, so they go there, and they start to eat the shingles, when the witch comes out, and it's like, "Who's nibbling on my house?" Also British, "Who's nibbling on my hippity-hippities?" And the children who are Dutch, they just poke their fingers into the little holes they've made of the house, hoping to hold back the dam of icing. And they say, "Not us, we didn't do it." But then, the witch is onto them, and she lures them in with more candy. And then eventually she throws Hansel, the bigger one, into a cage, and she's going to eat him and make Gretel start the oven and put him in. Right.
Right.
And she spends a couple of weeks trying to fatten him up, but he, by putting food in the cage, but she can't see very well, right? Because one of the things that evil has taken from her is her sight, and that's actually true. As you fall deeper down the well, you begin to be able to see things less clearly and see your own situation less clearly. So that's symbolized in the story by the witch becoming blind or almost blind. And so as she goes to the cage to see how fat he is, she says, "Stick out your fingers so I can feel how fat it is." And he holds out like a chicken bone. It's always real skinny. And so he delays for a long time until she just gets fed up. It's like, "I don't care how skinny you are. Get in the oven anyway." And she makes Gretel start the oven and stuff. Or she starts the oven and then she says, "Gretel, go stoke the oven." And Gretel is, of course, not an idiot. And she says, "Oh, I don't know how to start the oveny-woveny." And the witch goes, she says, "Oh, stupid child," like this. And she gets in, and then she gets to go show her. And Gretel shoves her in and locks the door, just like a little Hitler.
Yep.
Puts her in the oven, and then she burns up, and they find their way home again through some means. So this one is obviously it's a story about all the ways that evil attacks children, right? So you've got the people were not idiots, and they understood that biological relations matter, and that people often get jealous of providing for children that are not theirs. And I'm not, if you adopted someone, terrific, great job, but you've probably encountered this yourself. I know a fella, his name, well, I don't know if I should say his name. Let's call him Timothy. His name starts with a T, but it's not Timothy. But I'll just call it anyway. And he adopted some kids, and he had some biological kids beforehand. He had one biological son, and then they adopted a girl, and then they had another kid. Yeah, like a biological kid. And he confessed to me one day. He said, "I found that I sometimes don't like the adopted one as much." And I said, "Well, that's probably a somewhat biologically natural reaction." And what you have to do is fight against that, right? And try to treat them all the same. And try to give them the same amount of, care and stuff. And he felt really bad about this, obviously, but there's some feeling that was welling up that he couldn't help. But like, if you didn't do it voluntarily, especially like if you're a stepmom, you marry this guy for, his protection or whatever, and he's got other children. Like in America, the number one time children get abused is by a single mother's boyfriend or a new stepdad. Yeah. Number one. And the old people, though they didn't know about biology and like stuff, they were smart. And they could notice trends. And they said, well, step parents, adopted parents are more likely to be abusive, right? So that's number one, that gets in there. And then number two, the witch is just the archetype of the stranger with candy. Yeah. Right? Just luring kids away to eat them, which is, it's sort of symbolic of actually, sexual predation and whatnot. And she can't see because she's been so blinded by her evil and wickedness, right? Right. So all this stuff is wrapped up in the story, like this is how people prey on children. This is how evil preys on children. This is what you got to look out for. And children, one of the things you can do about it is be on the lookout for these sorts of people and leave trails, like let people know where you're going, Right. So all this stuff is in the Hansel and Gretel story.
It's really practical.
It's a very practical story. Yeah. So it's like a parable, but super practical. Right. Now, the last one I'll talk about is Sleeping Beauty, which Jordan Peterson did a good one on this. I know people are like, Jordan Peterson, because, he's like.
He kind of went off the rails there.
Well, yeah, but I think he had to. I don't think he had an exit strategy. Right. Like he was flying super high, and I think he was just like, I don't know how to land this plane. I'm just gonna crash it. Yeah. I gotta get down at some point. Right. I don't know I got up here, but no one taught me how to land. And I think he just had to, But he did an excellent one of this. But everyone knows Sleeping Beauty. She fought there. So the king and the queen, right? They desperately want a child. They're old. They're getting on in years, and they're afraid they're not able to, and they constantly pray for a child, and it doesn't come. And eventually, the queen goes to bathe in the river, and a frog jumps up and tells her, "You'll have a kid this time next year," right? A daughter. Most people would leave out that story. Like that's that part. That's not in the Disney version because it's a little weird. It's one of those things that tags on. Yep. But the frog is, of course, symbolic of someone that lives in two worlds, spirit world and physical world, because they live in both the water and on the land. Right, which is why the Kek imagery and the Pepe has come up, because the frog people, we live in the normal world, but we also live in this other world. That's one of the reasons that archetype was chosen. It's because symbolism happens. But anyway,
whoa. Do you think it was someone intentionally chose it for that reason, or that's just the reason it manifested by the cosmic rhythms of the universe?
I think it was subconsciously chosen for that reason. Okay. Right. So the prediction comes true. She does have a child, and the king and queen throw a great feast at the christening for the child. Right. All the people come, all the nobles, and they invite all the spirits of the forest except for one. They invite all, again, highly symbolic numbers here, all the good fairies, which are spirits. They invite all 12 of them, but the 13th one, Maleficent, which represents all the dark powers and all the bad things, they don't invite her, right? And so at the christening, all of the spirits are giving blessings to the child. Number 1 gives her beauty, number 2 gives her goodness, 3 gives riches, 4 gives charm, and so on and so on. And they get all the way to number 11, and then Maleficent pops in, and she's like, angry that she wasn't invited to the party. Why did all my sisters get invited and not me? And the king and queen are like, oh, we just forgot about you, And the Maleficent makes the point. She's like, no. When you have a child, a newborn, and you're about to go through the birthing process and all this stuff, the last thing in the world you forget about is all the evil that might happen. Right? She's like, you don't forget about all the bad stuff that could happen when you're bringing a new child into the world. Right? You didn't forget about me. You just didn't want me here. And they're like, You're right. So she curses the child, and she says, listen, on her 15th birthday, she will prick her finger on a spindle of a spinning wheel, and she will fall down dead. Right. And then she disappears, and then the 12th fairy says, oh, I can't take away the curse, but I can soften it. She will not die. She will just sleep. Right. And so there's a lot of symbology built in right there. I mean, one, well, I'll finish the rest of it, then we'll talk about it. But so anyway, the king and the queen trying to beat fate, which you can never do. They have all the spindles and all the spinning wheels. Spinning is banned in the kingdom. No one is allowed to make any thread. Like, get rid of all of them. Oh, they're all gone. But of course, they forget one. And on her 15th birthday, Sleeping Beauty goes upstairs. She's wandering around the castle. She walks upstairs to the attic, and there's this old woman at a spinning wheel up there. And she says, I've never seen anything like this. What's going on? Would you like to try? Says the old woman, who's Maleficent in disguise, obviously. And she does. She pricks her finger on the spinning needle, falls down asleep. And so does the whole castle. And it's encased with these wall of thorny roses.
Ooh.
Okay. And then, of course, the prince hears about this legend. They're asleep for 100 years. All of the castle is in like this Rip Van Winkle state. And he hears about it, and he hears the most beautiful girl in all the world is there. So he goes, he cuts through all the thorny roses and fights Maleficent in the form of a dragon, kills her, and then wakes the princess, and thereby the rest of the castle with a kiss. Right. Okay. That's the story. So one is when it's the overprotective parent, right? It's because they want to they have one child and they don't want to risk anything with her, as so many people do today, right? This is why helicopter parenting is bad, because people only have 1 or 2 children. When you had like 6 or 7, you could not possibly helicopter child all of them, but also, all your eggs weren't in one basket, as it were, right? So they want to helicopter, and they only invite all the good things. None of the bad things shall come here. It's like the mom that cleans up everything so well, never lets her children around anything dirty, and the kid grows up to have allergies. Right? Because they didn't invite the bad, and so that makes their daughter very weak and very naive. She's trusting of any old woman that comes around. She's never seen a spindle, one of the most basic things. And she's never like the Buddha story, or the as we talked about last time, Jehoshaphat and Barlam. She's never seen any blood either, because they've done everything they can to keep her safe, right? And let no sickness meet her eyes. Let just keep away Maleficent at all costs. And so when she sees the blood of her own finger, she just faints from the terror of it. She's completely useless as a person, because they didn't allow any evil. They didn't, like, what you want to do is you can't keep the evil out. You can't keep the snake out of the garden. So you want to get strong enough to get rid of the snakes. You can't, if you try to keep them all out, eventually one gets through and then it kills you.
Right.
Right. So, anyway, the king comes in, the prince comes in, and this is obviously so an excess of femininity, which is this whole castle, this whole kingdom has been an excess of femininity, because there's this girl there, and they don't want anything bad to happen to her at all. It's all very passive. There's no aggression whatsoever. There's no violence. There's no dealing with the unknown, with things that are scary. And it causes everyone to fall into a sleep of passivity, right? And that can only be awakened by the masculine joining it, which is the prince coming in. And the prince comes in, slays the dragon, which everyone is sleeping in terror of, and then it allows them to wake up. So this is like an excess of femininity can only be countered by masculinity. Now, Beauty and the Beast is the opposite story. The man turns into a hyper-masculine beast, right? And that can only be calmed by the feminine influence.
Oh.
Right, so you got the curse on each side. Sleeping Beauty is excess femininity, which needs the masculinity to awaken it. And Beauty and the Beast is excess masculinity, which needs the femininity to soften it. And you need both of those. You can't go to one side or the extreme, right? And so all that's wrapped up in these stories, right? And what I'm going to claim is that all of these have some basis in something that actually happened, But just like Twin Peaks had to be it had to be sort of rounded out and smoothed over the edges into a coherent story over time.
Right.
But, you had to have your map on the wall, and you had to figure out, you got your push pins, and then someone's like, well, we got to connect these with string. Right? Because if you just have a scatter plot of push pins, it doesn't mean anything. But you can connect the dots.
Yeah.
A coherent picture. And that's how it all goes. And that's why I have my Whataburgers up on the wall, along with poor Leslie in Washington, where she said she got abducted, but I don't believe her because she's loopy, but I still put it up on the wall. She's from Germany, and she's not mentally all there. But as so many people, if you ever go to a UFO conference, and you should go to a UFO conference because they're delightful, abductees are a bit of the loopy crowd often.
Well, they've been through a lot,
That's true, but you know what you can do with an abductee? You can go up to any of them and you can say, hey, what's your number? And they'll go like, ooh, my number's 1010. Or my number's 1414. Or I'm 1234. Like, they've all got this number that they feel has been revealed to them as like their number to watch out for in synchronicities in the universe.
Really?
It's very strange. It's very strange. But they've all got it.
So, wait, whoa.
Yeah.
If I have a number.
You do have a number.
Does that mean I've been abducted by aliens?
No, that's just one sign. That's the one sign. You need, there's a lot of signs of abductions, like paranoia.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I'm kind of paranoid.
Yeah, well, that's true. Fascinated by synchronicities. You ever had missing time? Like where you had some time where you're like, you think it's like going on, and then you like look around like, what happened? And it's like 3 hours later than you thought.
Yeah, I've experienced that before.
Was that accompanied by intense nosebleeds?
No.
Okay, well, the nosebleed is often common, but so you've got a lot of the hallmarks. Okay. Maybe you were. I don't know. I remember when you were levitated down your hallway.
Yeah, I have levitated.
That could be. You might be a UFO abductee. I don't know.
Okay, we'll have to explore that. Maybe one of these shows you can quiz me about all the things, and we'll try to stitch them together with some red yarn and make something out of it.
That would be great, because you would be a fantastic addition to any UFO conference. Sitting in the corner with the ladies and the men going, they have basically AA meetings for people that think they've been abducted.
Really?
Wild. It's wild. You can go there, and
I would love to go to one of those.
I know. So maybe you should, because maybe it happened.
Yeah, maybe it did. I don't know. So okay, I gotta
talk about Aquaponics.
Well, before we get that, I want to recommend a fairy tale that I recently read. It's a more recent composition by Mr. John Ruskin called "The King of the Golden River." What's it called?
Being of the Golden River?
The King of the Golden River.
Yeah.
And I read it with the kids recently. I thought it was pretty good. So you guys, if you're looking for a new fairy tale, if you've exhausted all the classics, The King of the Golden River is a pretty fun one. And I really love John Ruskin. He is a very smart guy. And we should do his essay on the storm clouds. I'll write this down. The storm cloud of the 20th century. Or is it the 19th century? I can't remember. But he talks about a weather phenomenon that I don't think happens anymore. And he's the point of his essay is to say, what happened to this weather phenomenon? It used to happen and now it's gone.
What is the weather phenomenon?
He called it prismatic clouds. And he described it as a cloud exploding with like rainbow light.
Ooh.
As if like emanating from inside the cloud in all directions, not like a rainbow, but multicolored light bursting from the cloud.
Well, this is a new rabbit hole I've never heard about.
And he talked about it. Well, I accidentally stumbled upon this one day. I was reading a book of essays by John Ruskin, and he said that it was like the storm cloud of the 19th century or whatever. And I thought, oh, he's presaging World War I or some such thing. And I was like, no, he's actually talking about clouds.
Like a real cloud.
Yeah, I was talking about real clouds. I said, well, this is weird. And so I kept reading it. And he actually went around giving this presentation to different societies and things, trying to figure out what happened. Because apparently there was this weather phenomenon that was very common in England at some point. And then at some point it stopped. and he was saying, "Hey, what the heck, guys?" And apparently there wasn't a lot of work done on this, or a lot of notice taken that this thing quit happening. And he was kind of like, "I know what I saw. You guys saw it too. It's gone, and I want the truth." That was sort of his, position on it.
Right.
It's very weird little essay to read because you can't. I've never seen anything that I could relate to what he's describing.
Yeah.
But he writes about architecture and history and literature and all kind of stuff like that. He was sort of a popular cultural critic of his time.
Right. I mean, maybe it did.
So he was not a kook. He was a well-respected dude. So we'll have to cover that sometime. I'll pick some excerpts from it. Well, we're making a list of things we have to cover. But yeah, let's talk about aquaponics. And this won't be a long segment because I've only just conceived of the idea. But at my place of business, I've got a few hundred spare square feet. And I have a 275-gallon tank wherein one could put fish. And I said, well, why don't I fill this tank up with water and start a population of fish in it and then get a bunch of plants.
Right.
And then nourish the plants with the fish water. And so I started looking into this, and turns out there's this thing called aquaponics where you do exactly that. You have a colony of fish. Normally if you have an aquarium, you have to filter the water because their poop builds up in the water and it eventually becomes toxic to the fish. So you have to clean it somehow. And so in this system, you will pull the water out of the bottom of the fish tank with some sort of pump. And then oftentimes you'll put it in a secondary sort of bacterial treatment chamber, like a septic tank for your fish, and let it kind of stew in there for a little while, and then you feed it to the plants. And then all your plants, if you're really into this, your plants are going to have they're going to be elevated, and they're going to have draining, the excess water the plants don't take up will drain out of the bottom. And you collect it and give it back to the fish. And the plants clean the water of all the excess nitrogen and give all sorts of other mineral goodness. And it's good for the fish, and it's good for the plants. You get this little circle of life thing going on.
So you're basically creating a little ecosystem.
Yeah, it's sort of a segmented ecosystem. And even if you give certain kind of plants, they can be semi-aquatic plants that have roots that extend into the water and will draw nourishment from the fish directly. So it's really cool. So I think I'm going to set this up over the next few weeks, and I can keep our listeners updated on the progress.
That would be good. That would be good.
Also, I'm taking recommendation. If anybody's ever done this, I'd like some tips on what varieties of fish I should use or plants I should start with, that sort of thing.
I used to grow an exceedingly rare species of tree in a pond. I guess I still do, because I say I used to grow it, meaning my family had a piece of land with a pond on it in which these trees grew. Mm-hmm. And we didn't do anything to them in any way. So I didn't really do anything. They just happened to be there. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know they were rare until one day I was out there, and some guy, you could see them from the road. And some guy pulls up very excitedly, and he jumps out of the car and he says, "These I thought these may have been almost extinct." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And it turns out he was some professor from some university that studied trees. Mm-hmm. And he was like, these are like super rare trees. You got to keep these alive. And I said, I had no idea that these trees, because they're like, imagine it looks a little like an oak tree, but it goes right out of the middle of a deep pond.
Ooh, okay.
Which is not what normally oak trees do, right? And it's a little more twisted and stuff. But he was like, these are super rare trees. I don't even know what they were named. I don't remember what they were called. But so that was my aquaponics. Mm-hmm. Is that I didn't do anything, and there were some trees.
That's very in tune with nature.
I was very in tune with nature. I'm so in tune with nature. I just me and nature.
Right on.
But yeah, so that was good. I'm gonna try one of these days. I'm gonna actually farm. Do you think I could put soil on the top of the van and grow things off the van as I was driving down the road.
I've thought about this, actually.
And I can roll down the window and reach up and get a radish and come down and start chewing on it.
I don't think the top of the van, but if you got a trailer.
Okay.
You could have a rolling garden in a trailer.
I would like to have just like strawberries hanging down from the roof where I could pick them out the window.
Maybe you have one of those roof racks. You could like put a tarp in it and fill it with dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, then where would the solar power be?
Oh, do you have solar panel up there?
If I cover the solar panels with dirt, it's not going to work.
So I'm saying you should do it in a trailer. It's easier to water that way too.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, owls, which are not what they seem. Did you know owls and UFOs go back right to the beginning?
No, I did not. What are you talking about?
Kenneth Arnold, who was the original, in 1947, Kenneth Arnold had the original quote unquote modern UFO sighting.
Okay.
He's the guy that saw the first like flying saucer of the modern era that was widely reported.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a pet owl. How many people have a pet owl?
Not many.
And he kept in a little owl house that he built. Little owl house, and his daughter, for his daughter, and she loved that little owl house. But so I'm going to talk about I'm referencing the works of Mike Cleland. Mike Cleland, Clellend, I think. Anyway, if you want to see this guy, just Google owls, UFOs, and he's the first guy that comes up. Okay. Because he's like the owl guy. He also writes books on ultralight backpacking and skiing. Mm-hmm. And he tries to keep those two worlds separate because, when you go to an ultralight backpacking conference, you don't want them to be like, oh, and also I talk about how owls are really UFOs.
Skiing like snow skiing?
Yeah, like snow skiing.
I think I may have read one of his books on snow skiing.
Yeah. He knows all about all that sort of stuff. And also, he has been abducted by aliens, or at least he feels he was.
Cool.
Right? So, the thing about the owls is he started noticing, and it's all going to tie together. He started noticing that after his weird abduction thing, his experience actually, now that I think about it, it really dovetails yours a lot. You had the experience where you went outside and saw a UFO and the sky was sort of orange.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, he was walking along and with a friend one night, and he said he was going back to his house, and they were going to get there about 9 o'clock from a football game or something, I think. And he said they looked up, and the sky suddenly turned like a bright orange, like a flash, like someone flipped on a light switch and then turned it off. And he said, that was weird. And I got home and it was like 3 hours later, it was like midnight, and my parents were all mad at me.
Ooh, weird.
And then apparently he also saw a cigar-shaped craft in the sky a couple of days later or whatever. So he had the same color sky as you did, although his UFO was separated in time from the sky.
Did I call you when I was seeing this thing?
You did.
Okay. I remember this.
Yeah. So anyway, so he had this experience where he was in bed and he sat up and he looks out the window and he sees what he perceives to be, I think he said 6, maybe 7 gray aliens standing in his yard, looking in the window at him. And he said, and I just had this thought in my mind, oh, they're here. It's time to go back to bed. And he laid down in his sleep. And then he woke up and he had all these weird symptoms. And he said, did that really happen? And he spent his whole life. He said he spent about, like all the time between 1997 and 2009 wondering if he was psychotic. Which is not a healthy state to be.
That story's a little weird, man. I mean, he saw the aliens in his yard and he thought, oh, it's time to go back to bed.
Yeah, well, that's how it happens. It's this. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, the Twin Peaks is the greatest model in popular culture for how people think that these weird things happen and that there's something else going on. There's like a psychological and spiritual component too, where like you're not in your right frame. Mm-hmm. And things don't happen as you think they would, and you often forget things, and there's these disconjointed pieces, like in a fairy tale, like the frog that jumps out and talks to the prince.
Or your reaction to something is not right.
Well, yeah, like when I saw my UFO, me and my friend, we were outside, and we saw this UFO plain as day, except it was nighttime. And then we didn't talk about it again for 3 years. We went inside. We went and I think we played a video game for a minute, and then we went to bed. And then 3 years later, I was thinking, I was like, did that happen? And he was like, oh, I'm glad you said something. I've been wanting to talk about that for ages.
Oh, man.
And because, like I said, if you don't have a place to put a memory, it rolls off the table. Mm-hmm. That's really true. You need a map of push pins, which is why Maps is a map, guys. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. The Mystical American Patriot Society is also a map for you to put these memories in, right? It's for your push pins. So anyway, this and his memories are jogged about his abduction experience and his through these constant visions of owls. Like he'll be out camping, like I said, he's a big camper, and 3 owls will just fly in a circle over his head while he's laying down. Just circle him like vultures, but owls don't usually do that. That sort of thing. So the owls, Mike Clellan became obsessed with aliens and owls, and he just started putting this out there at these conferences and stuff. He says, "Has anyone else had these problems with owls?" And it got this huge response. It's everyone was like, "Yes, thank you for mentioning the owls, because they're these really annoying little critters." And so then he got his email over the next, and still today, over the past 10 years, he just gets 4 or 5 emails a day from someone telling about their UFO owl story. And he compiled them all into these books that are great. I think one's called The Messengers and another one's called The Stories of the Messengers. Anyway, so we're going to talk about some of those and where the owl comes in from. What is this all about? Well, first of all, what I'm going to try to tell you is that all these UFO stuff is sort of like a fairy tale manifesting. Okay. Because there's this tendency, and I get it, and it's sometimes true, to just call everything a demon. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that fits it doesn't fit all the data. Because some of this stuff, if you judge stuff by their fruits, some of the stuff has very positive fruits for people. Mm-hmm. And some of it has very negative, and some of it's just sort of what was that about? It's neither positive or negative, just sort of weird. Yeah. So first of all, let's think about it. Just think about the shape, right? So the gray alien, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. It's a very archetypal shape. Big eyes, small mouth, right? Mm-hmm. It sees everything. It's a creature that sees all but says little or nothing. Sometimes they don't even have a mouth. So it's all observation and no speech, right? There's no logos in it, you could say. It's all observation, no speech. Very small, frail body, hairless, right? It's all and a huge head, bulbous head. Mm-hmm. So it's all intellect and observing with no physicality. Mm. Right? It's an archetype of the intellect divorced from physicality.
The phrase "the Watchers" just kind of popped into my head there.
Right, the Watchers. It's very similar to that. It's all the it's similar to a god in folklore that's all eyes, covered in eyes, right? It sees all intellect, but very little or no physicality. So it's an archetype of the intellect divorced from physicality. Bigfoot, by the way, is the opposite. It's all physicality divorced from intellect, right? So you've got these two archetypes running around in the popular zeitgeist of fairy tales manifesting, right? You've got the intellect without physicality, the physicality without intellect. Then you've got the flying saucer itself, right? It's always this geometric shape. It's always like a saucer, or maybe it's a cylinder, or it's a triangle, right? It's always flying silently in the night, right? It's associated with planets, or just like, all the Roman gods had an associated planet, right? It's from the stars. It's something up there. Just like the gods came down and had sex with people in the mythology, the aliens come down and they do weird sex stuff. Yeah. Right? They probe you and all this nonsense. Or they sometimes people will say a lot of women for whatever do this, and they think that they've been abducted and had their eggs taken with someone else, and that they have hybrid alien babies. Yeah. in the sky, and those people are some of my favorite because there was this website, I think it's still out there, a hybrid children program where these women, and of course it inevitably gets tied to like someone selling you crystal therapy or whatever. And I loathe these people, but I also love these people because they're just like, I think they actually believe it, and they're just that insane.
Right.
Like they're like, and I will help you with your crystal energies, healing the earth to meet your star child psychically. As we see, I love that stuff. I want if you guys ever lose me, I will be somewhere on a mountain with a long beard, pretending to sell things to distressed women.
I'll know where to look. That's good. That's helpful.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, so the owl, also compare the owl to the gray alien, right? They fly silently in the night, just like a UFO. They have the big eyes, right? They're able to navigate the underworld / darkness they see in the dark, right? And in folklore, they're always seen as both wise, but also maybe a little evil, right? Okay, so let's go through some of these cases that he's documented. So this was from his first book. I think it's called, oh, you know what? Do you know what? You know what his book was called? I'm not even making this up. Okay. I didn't even connect this. His book is called The Messengers, but it's also, he said another working title, I think he said this was calling The Watchers, and he didn't even think about the biblical thing.
Ooh, okay.
So a bit weird. I may be wrong on that. I may have just made that memory up.
Okay.
So I don't.
Anyway, I've been disclaimed.
So his first book was a guy named Derek. And he was camping in Arizona in the desert in 1995 with 3 friends. And 2 of the guys had gone to bed already, right? But Derek was sitting up. They were talking with the 4th guy, and they were stargazing. And mid-conversation, Derek notices an extremely large owl sitting on top of a cactus, just staring directly at him, right? And he felt sort of uneasy, like, you know. He said, I felt as if the owl were asking me to contemplate the vast scale of the open desert and the stars above us and the universe. And I felt really weird. And as soon as Derek points out the owl to his friends, it flew off. Okay. So they resume their conversation, and about 15 minutes later, they see a large black triangle craft flying from behind them along the top of the canyon wall to their left. And it's got these little, it's flying completely silently. And it's got these like red lights on it. And then both men saw it, and then it just disappeared over the horizon. Now, as a child, Derek had experience sort of similar to yours, where he was playing Pac-Man alone in the back room of the house, and he recalls time seeming to slow to a crawl, and then snapping back to reality with an intense nosebleed, which is very similar. That's very common in abduction cases, is this nosebleed thing. Again, it's like the spinning wheel. You prick your finger on, there's this thing of blood, right? The symbolism, you smell the blood, like there's blood in the water, that sort of idea. And so then later, as an adult, Derek's girlfriend was asleep with him in the bed, and she woke up in the night, very similar to what happened with Mike Cleland. She saw an alien in their bedroom, somehow shape-shifting. And she said, I resisted the urge to scream or wake Derek because she felt, quote, if I woke him, they wouldn't be able to return him to his body.
Oh.
I don't know what that's like. So that's what I mean. Like this, he's maybe being abducted, but it's not necessarily 100% physical. You see, like you may have been levitating down your room. How much of it was physical? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe all of it. I don't know. Okay, so there's this owl thing. Now, another guy, he was anonymous, and Mike met him at a UFO conference, this is the kind of great people you can meet at UFO conferences. They'll tell you the wildest stuff. So he said he was driving down a country road late at night, and along the edge of the road, he sees himself coming up on an owl standing on the side of the road. And he notices the owl, he pulls up to it, and he stops, and he looks at it, because it's very strange that it's just standing there in the middle of the night on the road, illuminated by his headlights. And he said, afterwards, I thought, isn't that really weird that I could like look out the window into the face of an owl? Wouldn't that make the owl like 4 foot tall? If it's standing on the side of the road?
Yeah.
Right? And he said, I didn't think about that at the time, but then later I was like, I looked at it for a while, and he said, got creeped out. Like I felt like the owl was angry at me and wanted me to leave. And so I drove away, and the owl just stood there. And then later, like a few weeks later, I saw a real owl in a nest outside, and I said, "Hey, owls aren't 4 feet tall." And so, and he did what a lot of people who have these weird experiences do, and he went to a hypnotist to try and see if he could recover suppressed memories, right? Which is a highly dubious technique.
Yeah,
people will say that it does. People will say that it doesn't. I don't know, but he says he didn't get anything out of it except he said, in the middle of my hypnosis session, all I could recover was I was pretty sure the owl was wearing boots. Very Twin Peaks sounding, right? The owl is not what it seemed, right? So there's a couple things. Was this like an illusion projected onto his mind to mask something that was there? Like Sigmund Freud came up with this idea. Sigmund Freud called it a screen memory. And what he discovered is that a lot of people had very traumatic incidences. Their brain, to protect them from remembering it, would cover it over with a memory that was nicer. So like you may be sexually abused, and then you would later remember as a child, and you would later remember that as like, oh, someone just sort of like slapped me around. Or even more ridiculous, like you might remember it as I was playing and a dog bit me. And then you would dig into that and you begin having people talk about it as like, well, it wasn't a dog, it was my uncle, and it wasn't, but they had constructed this thing to protect them from this trauma. And so what's happening here? What did he see on the side of the road? And his brain was just like, owl. Like, I don't know what that is, owl, right? Because you got to think, what would your brain say if you saw something it had never seen before? If you saw something totally novel, how would it interpret it? I don't know. But so these owls are very common, like these giant, as these screen memory things. Okay, so that's another one. We'll talk about Joe's owl story. So Joe was a guy, he saw both a UFO and an owl within minutes in 2012 when he was 20 years old. It was about 3 a.m. in the morning. He's driving in the car with 4 friends. Joe and his close friend Dave in the front seat. And they both see a brilliant blue light descend from the sky, like poke through the clouds, like boop. Joe said it was as bright. It was bright as hell, so I couldn't make out the shape, but it was high enough to pass through the clouds. The 3 in the back didn't see it, and it lifted back up to the clouds. Okay, so they drop one of their friends off, and they head back. So they were just driving all together. They're going to drop him off at home. We're going back. They go at about 55 miles an hour on the road. And a white owl, pure white owl, white feathers, flies right up beside the car and keeps pace with it. And as it's flying, its head is turned so that it's looking in the window at them.
Ooh.
Right? Just looking at it. And it says it does this for 4 to 5 seconds, and it flies off. And they go about a mile down the road, and another or the same white owl does the exact same thing again. Flies down. And it's just looking right in the window at them, keeping pace with the car. It says everyone in the car sees this both times, and they just start screaming with this primal fear they don't know how to explain. Like they just, and Joe said his friends didn't want to discuss it. Like almost like they felt they'd be punished if they talked about it.
Oh, weird.
Right? Now, I would call all these sort of these are like proto-fairy tales. Like the experiencer has had something happen. And there's like a hint that there's some meaning in there. There's like a hint that there's some big symbolism happening here, but they don't understand what it is. And it's not clear what it is. Like it's implicit, but not explicit. And they haven't had time to go back and retcon the story. And this is how mythology is made. Something weird happens. And then you have your scatter plot of push pins on your map. And then over time you work it out into a shape of connected dots. Right. That's like you can already sort of feel like this, like a man is traveling down a dark, lonely road and encounters a wise talking owl. Right. That's like sort of like that motif is right there built into these stories. It's very fairy tale sounding. Okay.
Sure,
so now,
so
there's one more that he describes. And I think this one is a little bit further down the road of development into becoming a myth or becoming like something told around the campfires, or something that could be passed down. Because this guy's story was he had more time to flesh it out because it took place over a longer period. And this one, I love the story. It's the White Owl and the Hound of Hell, right?
Ooh,
which is a great title. This one actually happens in England, so I was hesitant to put it in a show, the Mystical American Patriot Society, but I thought it was such a good example I had to.
We'll allow it.
Forgive me, this takes place in the land of Tiddly Widdlies and Tinky Winkies. Really all of the Teletubbies. So in 1997, on the rolling farmland of England's Wiltshire County, which is the heart of the world's crop circle reports, by the way. There was a Dutch researcher named Bert Jansen, and he'd been investigating crop circles because, of course, he was. For the past 3 summers, right? But he felt his research had sort of come to an end. He had he had nothing left to look at. I've seen all the circles. If there's another one, it'll be like the other ones. I don't know. I haven't gotten anywhere with it. So I think I'm about to give up on my crop circle part of my life. He said, the night when I was about to die, I was just about to fly back. And he said, but I went to go see one more, and I saw a bright orb over a field in Wiltshire, a ball of light floating over a field near the dark in the evening. It sort of like cruised over the fields, glowing, getting brighter, and it would swell in size or shrink. It would become as big as a hot air balloon or as small as a grapefruit.
Ooh.
Just sort of back and forth, darting across the fields, right? He said, and then it moved and disappeared behind a shed, and it didn't come back into view. So I followed it, and I tried to find it again. This is very sounding like a will-o'-the-wisp. Like in German folklore, there's a ball of light, and it leads you down a path to where you eventually die, because you follow it through the woods. Do not follow lights in the woods, guys. Number 1. My own mother saw a will-o'-the-wisp out in Arkansas, and which is the Spook Light of Arkansas, which a lot of people know about. You can go. The Spook Light of Arkansas is very famous will-o'-the-wisp, and it leads people down a strap. Don't follow them. You can observe them from a distance. But anyway, he's doing the following thing. He went up to the shed, found it locked. He puts his ear to the door, and he hears this hissing sound. A little freaked out, so he left, and he said, I'll come back the next day. He comes back the next morning, and he sees a window up at the top of the barn with no glass in it at the second floor, and he thinks, could the orb have gone in there? Right? So desperate, which you also shouldn't do this, he breaks in through the farmer's locked shed or barn door. Don't do that. But sometimes people are driven to these things, and he hears the same hissing. So he climbs the ladder, and he finds the source of the hissing at the top of the loft, a nest of white owls.
Ooh. A
nest of white owls. All right? So then years pass, right? So he has time to sort of work out the meaning of this. And he's married at this time. By this time, he and his wife are crappies. And you know how I feel about crappies, but I'll let it pass. And they're also giving, they are also sort of, shilling people out of their money by taking them on this metaphysical tour of Wales, where they go around, they look at like stone circles and ancient folklore sites and stuff. And they've got like 8 people that have come from America and paid them to do this. It's totally on the up and up, but it's a little weird.
Yeah.
It's like they're not doing anything wrong, but it's also like, really?
Metaphysical tours just feel like a rip to me.
Yeah, I agree. But anyway, that's what they're doing. And they said, they on the tour, all of their tour people discovered that they were crop people. They said, well, we'd really like to see a big crop circle. And they said, well, I don't know. We've got all this schedule. We've got our very regimented schedule of metaphysical whale sites that we have to go to. I don't know if we can pack it in, but we'll see. So one night, they finished having some food at the restaurant, and they said, well, let's go out to this field and just see if anything's happening there. And if there is, maybe we'll take the people by in the day. Okay. So they're driving to this field, and while they're driving, this white owl glides gracefully into their headlights, and they follow it, right? Because he has in his mind, like, oh, the barn and the white owls, here's another white owl.
Right.
And it leads them to this other field, and when they get there, the guy, Bert, he jumps out and he starts following the white owl up into the field. And his wife, whose name was Heather, she's behind, and she's looking for a flashlight in her backpack before she follows. She finds the flashlight. She looks up for her husband, and there at the top of the hill, she sees an enormous black dog, which she describes as a hellhound, like red eyes, this giant thing. And she said, I was terrified. And it disappeared into the field, into like the tall grasses. And I ran after him and said, are you okay? Are you okay? And he laughs. He says, if there was a hellhound, what are you going to do? Beat it off with the flashlight. So now in the part of Wales they were in, right, here's the thing. There was the mythology of the Hounds of Anon, which is basically hell, forever, ever and anon, that sort of idea. Mm-hmm. The underworld, right? The hounds of the underworld, which guard the Holy Grail, right? The source of everlasting life. So this field, the thing is, a few days later, a crop circle appears in this field that the hellhound had come to, that the white owl had guided them to. And in this crop circle is a symbol for squaring the circle, which is something that Bert had been obsessed with his whole life. This idea of squaring the circle is like this idea of like finding what your soul was supposed to do.
Yeah. It's like an alchemy thing, right?
It's like an alchemy thing. Yeah. Okay. So here we have all the elements of the fairy tale starting to come together. And you can see like there's this owl that leads them to the darkness, the white bird, just like in Hansel and Gretel. They get led by a white bird to the witch's house. They get led by a white bird through the underworld of the night to a place to the gates of hell, right, where the hellhound guards, which is this mythological place, same spot where the hellhounds guarded the gates of Anon. And then behind it is the treasure you're seeking, right? Behind it is there's the squaring the circle. Behind it is the treasure you're seeking. And he finds this by following the owls like this. He wouldn't have done this if he hadn't followed owls into a barn, with a locked door. All the elements, you see that the fairy tale is starting to coalesce a little bit better than in the first stories.
Yeah, yeah.
It's starting to come together. And as these things happen, like when people they see these Bigfoots, over time, these stories get merged with other stories, or they get, the rough edges get smoothed out and the meaning gets placed onto them. And I think my thesis here is that is what's happened with a lot of these stories. Like there's probably a true element at the base, it's all true. There's probably like a factual, concrete thing that happened at the base of Sleeping Beauty.
Okay.
Right. That was then worked out and the edges were smoothed over time to where the spiritual meaning was manifest. But the weird thing is that whatever the spirit world is, it sort of bubbles up in these ways, very Twin Peakish ways, that give you all these push pins on your map, and then the man in the image of God is able to make meaning out of them, or to pull the thing out of them. And I'm not quite sure what that means, but there's something going on there.
Spooky.
There's something going on there with tiddlywinks or something. Maybe it's all British lies. I don't know.
So did I ever told you about my owl encounter?
Oh no, you didn't tell me you have an owl encounter also. See,
I did.
See?
It's not very dramatic, but in a lot like one of the stories you just told, I was driving along through a neighborhood. I was on my way to a party. And I was driving along through a neighborhood in the evening, and there's an owl standing on the side of the road. I don't think he was 4 feet tall, but he was big, and it was. I'm having trouble sort of remembering the finer points of this thing, but I'm sitting there, I'm leaning out the window, looking at this owl.
You stopped your car?
I stopped my car.
You're just like the guy in this story.
Yeah, I was bugging. I did not know
this beforehand, listeners. We didn't set this up.
No, I was bugging out when you started. So this owl's sitting there, just chilling, standing on the side of the road. There's no mouse or anything. He's just sitting there. And so I stopped the car. I'm looking at him. I get out of the car, and I walk up to him, and the owl's sitting there probably 3 feet from me. Just looking right back at me. Didn't move. Didn't do anything. And then I try to get a little bit closer, and he hops up on a tree limb right above my head and just continues to stare at me. And for some amount of time, I don't know how long, I just stand there staring at this owl. And then eventually I say, well, I guess I better move along. And I get back in my car. I go to the party. I don't know how long I was there. I was the last one at the party, but nobody remarked that I was late. So I don't know if I'm missing any time. There's really nothing to judge the basis of the missing time upon, if I was. But it was very weird encounter.
Have you talked with anyone about that before?
Yeah, well, when I got to the party, I said, hey, there was an owl. And I got out of the car and I looked at it, and they were all like, well, that's weird. But yeah. I didn't feel like anybody appreciated how strange it is that such a shy animal would just sit there and look at me in the face.
Yeah, and why is it standing on the side of the road? Yeah. I think you were abducted by aliens. I'm more and more of the opinion that you have been abducted by aliens.
And I see to this day, I'm able to spot an owl in the woods in the daytime, like from a long distance off.
Yeah.
In a weird, uncanny way that I can't really spot other animals. But I mean, it's happened on numerous occasions. I'll be walking through the woods, or even in my own neighborhood, and I'll look 100 yards into the woods and see an owl sitting on a limb, quite far away, in a way that I really shouldn't have been able to. And I think that's a little strange too.
Well, yeah, like a lot of well, that's the thing. You're fitting more and more. A lot of UFO abductees have some sort of not overly useful but strange power.
Yeah.
Like you can't market I'm an owl spotter.
Right. Yeah, it's not a thing. Not a thing. But it's not very marketable.
But they will have like some weird psychic ability after their encounter. Like some weird thing like, I know which elevator door is going to open. Like something completely useless. Like, yeah. But like they always can tell. Like if they're in a room of like 6 elevators and they push the button, like that one's going to open. Right. Something very, but see, again, there's the symbology there because you know which door, right? There's an infinite number of doors and you know which one.
All right. I'm going to try to put it to use. Today, after we record the show, I think I'm going to take my son up to the mountains. We're going to harvest some wild medicinal plants. And so I'm going to try and see if I can spot some owls. Because really, an owl, if it doesn't want you to see it, you're probably not going to.
No, and seeing owls in the daytime is difficult.
Yeah. So I'm going to see, I'll do an experiment. I'll report back if I'm able to spot some owls.
That's good.
This owl thing is really, I didn't know there was a connection there or that was a thing. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, Whitley Strieber, who wrote, here's the thing. Whitley Strieber, he wrote this book called Communion. Again, very symbolic name, right? In which he described his encounters with what he called the visitors, which sound very much like aliens. They were coming around his house. And one of the ways that he initially was alerted to their presence was this constant seeing of owls. Okay. So, but anyway, Whitley Strieber is the guy arguably who but who introduced the gray alien archetype into the consciousness of the public. Now, it was in that movie, what was the movie? Close Encounters? Before him, but not really. Like they weren't quite the gray alien shape. Right. It was close, but not really. But then Whitley Strieber, his book had a picture of a gray alien right on the cover. And like he's like, this is what I encountered. This is who I encountered. And and that book sort of all over the shelves of stores brought that into the public consciousness. Right. And so the owl thing, the UFO thing, just like I said, with the first UFO incidents, it's from the very beginning. It's been there. But Mike Clellan, he's done a lot of hypnotherapy. And again, I don't know how valid that is, but he even did some with Leo Sprinkle. You remember him from our talk about Project Blue Book? Yeah. Or not Project Blue Book, Project Beta. Yeah. He even went to Leo Sprinkle. He got hypnotized. And he said during some of his hypnotherapy sessions, he was like, look, when I'm under, just ask me about, and what about the owls? Since I'm like the owl guy. He said, so I was under, and it was this lady doing the hypnotherapy session. And she said, what about the owls? And he said, I was sort of silent for a long minute, but I remember even in my hypnosis saying, the owls are not important. The owls are a sign on the door. The door is what's important. And then I was like, well, there's just Twin Peaks coming out in real life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what the heck does that mean?
Right. Yeah.
It's like, that doesn't mean anything, and yet it implies everything.
Right.
So you've been abducted by aliens. I'm going to go ahead and go on record of saying that you've been abducted by aliens.
I'm not convinced.
You had all the hallmarks.
We'll do a show. Well, let's save that. Let's save that for a show. You come up with a bunch of questions. Maybe some new memories will spring into my mind that have been repressed, or I'll make some memories up.
Here's the thing, listeners. Smokestack has had a plethora of paranormal experiences, including levitating out of his bed.
Well, it's weird that you say that because I don't feel like a person that's had a lot of.
I know they never do
experiences.
Shared dreams, the number 11 dream, obviously.
Have we covered that on the show before?
I think you talked about it once.
Did I go through it or did I just mention it?
I think you just mentioned it.
Okay, well, actually, let's make that the next show. Let's analyze me for alien abduction. Okay,
and then you also had the orange sky with the UFO, the owl thing I never heard about, and you did your out of body experience when you almost drowned as a child.
Yeah, I've talked about that on the show, I think.
Yeah, so you're basically a walking magician's tale.
Did I tell you before we start to wrap up? Did I tell you about my dream a few weeks ago with the guy in my driveway?
No,
in the white shirt.
Do.
Okay, this is kind of messed up, and I don't know why it's messed up. That's what's bothering me. So here's the dream. It's very brief. I'm standing in the driveway near my garden, probably going to do some gardening. My family, I know they're around me somewhere, but I can't really put my finger on where they are. But they're out, it's just setting the scene. They're out there. We're probably all gardening or not gardening. And then I look up, and there's a tall man with a big belly and a bald head, and he's wearing khaki pants, some kind of like a deck shoe, a braided leather belt, and a white polo shirt tucked in so that his belly, it's tight across his belly. He looks like a big jolly guy, kind of like Steve Ballmer from Microsoft, and he's just got this big grin on his face, and he's just looking at me with this big grin on his face. And I don't know why he's there. There's zero context. And I'm overcome with horror. And I woke up screaming, and my wife had to shake me awake because I was just screaming out in horror. That's the whole dream.
Through the darkness of futures past, the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Fire, walk with me.
I don't want to walk with no fire. Dude. It was really, and it's kind of been stuck in my craw for a couple of weeks. Yeah,
well, it should be.
Well, one thing
you're an alien abductee.
I didn't mention in my telling.
Because everyone knows that if you're a good psychologist, what you do is you just force a narrative upon your patient. You just say you are an alien.
Well, here's an important detail that I left out. So I remember thinking as I'm beginning to scream, I can't look directly at his face, or I can't look directly at him. I'm sort of looking around him, but yet I was able to describe him in great detail and can see his face in my mind right now, even though I couldn't look at him.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means either. But that was really the only thought that was coherent, was that I can't look directly at him.
Yeah.
And then it was just screaming.
Yeah.
But I know exactly what he looks like. And I was thinking maybe after, a few days afterward, I was trying to work out what this dream meant. And I thought, well, if I would apply it to our current, pandemic disaster situation, maybe it means that I know what's going on, but I can't look it in the face. But I probably really know what's going on.
But why is it Steve Ballmer?
But I won't admit it. Well, he's related to Bill Gates, or involved with Bill Gates.
Oh, that's true. Maybe people will now, after this show, start seeing Steve Ballmer standing on the side of the road at night.
It wasn't Steve Ballmer actually in the dream. I'm just describing that sort of phenotype.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a dream about Steve Ballmer. But other than that theory about what it might mean. I have no idea.
I feel like Steve Ballmer is gonna appear in my bedroom at night now.
If he does, let me know.
And try to take me on his UFO. He's gonna be covered in owl feathers, and he's gonna be going, "Woo! Windows XP."
So I'd like to close the show with a little music. Okay. This is Wilson Pickett doing a rendition of "Hey Jude," and the only reason I like it is because he absolutely loses his mind and starts screaming at the end. And I hope you all enjoy it.
Nice.